Hello, this is Darren Pulsipher, Chief Solution Architect of Public Sector at Intel, and welcome to Embracing Digital Transformation, where we investigate effective change leveraging people, process, and technology. On today's episode, we're going to talk about cloud migration and the role of the CIO with special guest Doug Bourgeois. Doug, welcome to the show. You are the Managing Director of GPS Cloud Strategy at Deloitte. So you know a lot about all this cloud stuff. Or you better.
Been doing cloud for too long. Let's just say a long time.
A long time. We won't age ourselves on this, right? By talking about before cloud, pre-cloud. But you were there before it was cloud, right?
Yeah, I got into cloud actually. I was still working as part of the federal government, and I was running a fairly large shared services organization. And I got acquainted with cloud kind of early on and saw some benefits to my service provider organizations, the users of my services, and thought, we might want to test this out and see if it's real. And then, that was about a dozen years ago or so. And, lo and behold, it's still here.
That's amazing. So you really were an early adopter, not just a provider, but you actually used it in government, which you must have been out there all by yourself.
At the time, there were a few others dabbling at the time. I think the only other organization that was very credible in what they were doing was NASA, and they at the time had something called the Nebula Cloud. And so it was pretty much us and them at that time, the only ones that were really driving towards enterprise capability. For me, it was, in my organization, our mission was providing all the back office functions for, all the other agencies, all the things that, nobody really wanted to do, the ERP hosting and the core financial management systems and the HR systems and kind of IT hosting in general. And so, it made sense for us. NASA, totally other end of the spectrum, very mission focused as we all know, but still kind of proves the point of the versatility of the cloud and the value.
So what would you say is, you said the versatility. What other value did you see on going to the cloud? What was your main reason to just investigate, besides being a technologist, which I know you are?
Yeah, there was definitely some of that. I have to fight my own tendencies to get all enamored with the latest and greatest technology capabilities. But, I saw what Amazon was doing at the time and, started to internalize how the value prop might be useful to my organization. And in my case, I think it ended up being a combination of two things, with the first being the opportunity to truly save money at the infrastructure level. Because I think if you look at what was happening in the industry at that time, we did truly have a server sprawl, and we were just into the virtualization craze, and so for me, it was an opportunity to not only virtualize, but also build cloud while virtualizing. And so I kind of got the double whammy, or the leapfrog effect, which gave my users cost savings. I remember in one particular service in the HR line of business, which was one of our early pilots, when we moved over to the cloud model and infrastructure, I believe we cut our unit costs to our end users by give or take 40%.
Huge.
Okay, suddenly we're going to lower your prices by 40%, and everybody was shocked. They thought it was just a game or some sort of ploy.
Of course they did. No one saves money in government. Come on.
Well, that was my mission, was to be the efficient provider, right? So that, the idea, as you well know, with shared services is once you reach economies of scale, you can provide these services more economically than, most organizations can on their own, with the exception of the truly super large behemoths. But then, they even over time, they question whether they should keep doing these things, right, that are amenable to a more centralized services approach. Well, today the journey continues. I think, I've seen over the years, let's talk macro and then we'll talk maybe micro here. From a macro perspective, in those early years, even a dozen years ago, for the most part, it was private cloud centric. It was people improving their data centers to incorporate a combination of consolidated, multi-tenant, and with automation capabilities kind of built in. And then we saw the pendulum swing, about 3-4 years after that, 5 years in some industries, over to the public cloud, right? It's the large hyperscalers, and everybody was moving to the cloud all of a sudden, right? And then I think, give or take about 3 years ago, we started to see this equilibrium in the middle. It's the hybrid cloud. People starting to realize that, there's different cloud models, there's different cloud solutions. And for most organizations, they have a wide variety of systems in their portfolio that kind of lend themselves to, to different models, some public, some private, and some hybrid, right? So we're seeing a more holistic approach, today. So that's kind of the micro view that I was, referring to earlier.
So what you're saying is, if you're smart, is what I just heard, you have a multi-hybrid cloud strategy. You're not putting all your eggs in one basket. You're not doing everything off-prem. You've got a combination based off of the different workloads and service level agreements or whatever it may be.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it's almost like purpose built or fit to purpose. I mean, it's the same idea. In some cases, there are reasons to employ cloud capabilities. I think of one client we supported, in the last year, who wanted to explore some machine learning models, which we use the cloud, to build those models. But once you have those models built, in order to support your business operations, those models need to be deployed where the business is operating, right? In some cases, that's the edge. In other cases, it's close to your core systems. And in some cases, those core systems are in the old data center, and in some cases, they're in the cloud, right? So you have to have the versatility in order to meet the needs and improve operations depending on the current, current architecture.
Yeah, you also mentioned that, hey, I have to have kind of a profound knowledge of what's really going on in my org, right? In both infrastructure and my line of business, I have to have a lot stronger relationship with my line of business now than maybe I had before, where I'm just providing infrastructure. Now I've got to know more so I can make educated architectural decisions on what's going on. We have to become more intimate, I guess, with what's out there.
Yeah, I'd say now more than ever. I think I think through my career, and if you can't tell from the white beard, that it's been a long journey in itself. But there's always been, throughout my entire career, the desire of the CIO and the CTO and the IT organization to, get closer to the business or get closer to the mission, and, be a true partner in what the overall organization is doing. But it's always been, for the most part, pretty elusive. It's been, it's been a gap. There's been shadow IT. I mean, we know the story. The story's been told over and over and over again. But I think now more than ever, it's even more important, as you point out, to be closer to the business. And I think there's two reasons for that. One, which we kind of talked about a little bit earlier, is the proliferation of data and artificial intelligence and analytics and machine learning into core business capabilities does require fundamental business understanding, right? That you're building models that are helping the business do things, and those things are business things, not necessarily technology things. They can be technology things, but that's not what we're talking about here. The second is this evolution of cloud has reached the stage where I think we've already entered into a new phase of cloud, which I call the digital age, which gets to modernizing and the core systems of the organization to improve their service capability for their end users, whoever those happen to be.
Well, to me, it's really kind of moving the CIO back to where he originally was, or he or she originally was, before they focused so much on infrastructure. I always say this in all my speeches. I say, take the infrastructure out of CIO. It's supposed to be information, right? Yeah. But we've been relegated to managing data centers, and we need to get away from that and back to managing the information in our in our organizations, in the company as a whole. So
yeah, couldn't agree more, with that, that perspective. Because, one, I was fortunate enough to have my early start in my career at FedEx, which was a very progressive use of technology type of an organization where, technology was center in how they drove their business strategy forward, and always was and always will. And so that, kind of taught me, how to gauge as a technology provider, as a technology executive, really be in tune with what the business is trying to do, even if they're not that good at articulating that to you, is to try and ferret that out and have dialogue to understand truly what their business objectives are, what their pain points and their challenges are, and then align the technology to help bring that, to life and overcome those pain points. And then coming into the patent office, which is where I was CIO when I entered into the government, I was fortunate. I inherited a CIO role that truly was a chief information officer that owned all information from business systems to dissemination of patent information after the patent is granted, and providing access to the world to all of the patents and trademarks that have been granted, right? A very, very broad perspective on information. Wow. And so I sat in that seat and had that perspective over a long period of time. And I totally agree with you. I saw many, many CIOs that they were kind of relegated to the infrastructure box. And I thought, how suboptimal is that? Right? And, those organizations are missing the opportunity to do something truly transformative, because they look at the CIO as a cost organization and are dealing with it from a cost perspective.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So let's talk about, hey, what are the steps that I would take? Let's say that I am a CIO. I want to up-level myself. I want to adopt cloud where I need to, so I don't have to manage kind of the day-to-day type things, as infrastructure things. What steps would I take? I mean, what's my progression to move forward? What's my roadmap? How do I even get started?
Going from a chief infrastructure officer to a chief information officer, what's that journey look like?
Yeah, what's it look like?
Or
do I switch jobs and just say, forget it, I'm not going to try this?
Well, I think there's some value in that perspective. Meaning, I personally was very selective in looking at the opportunities that I had in my career, and thought very carefully about the role of the CIO, the role of the IT organization, and making sure that fit with not only my strengths and my capabilities, but what my interests were and my passions as well. But that said, I think anytime you talk about a journey from here to there, I always think about there's more than one path, to get you there. So there's different avenues that a CIO can take to get from, focusing only on infrastructure to being more valuable to the organization and from a broader information perspective. I think in today's day and age, one way to do that is by positioning yourself to be the transformation executive in charge of something new that the organization is trying to do, right? So that's one way to do it. In other words, I still own all the infrastructure. Somebody else, usually business unit people, own all the applications in that model, right? But the organization is trying to transform itself in creating a new business process or getting into a new market, right? In order to do that, they need to create new things. So figuring out how to position yourself and your organization as the right place to execute that in concert with the rest of the organization. Maybe it's a new business unit that hasn't even been stood up yet. And then you have a stronger case for argument. Like, I have continuity, I have perspective. I work with all the other application owners, so I can see what they've done. I have actually the true enterprise perspective. Let me take this initiative forward. That's one way to do it.
I like that approach. I've no one's articulated that clearly before, so that's some good opportunity there.
I think that's probably the most common way. The history of the organization that I described in the patent office was they had the other end of the spectrum, right? So they had a devastating negative thing happen, in that the program business areas were in charge of one of these multi $100-200 million initiatives that failed. And so then the government oversight organizations and the Congress got involved, and everybody, they got, a certain kind of a IT timeout, and with all of their capabilities taken away from them, and they were instructed and given advice by a lot of experts that said, hey, you really need to structure your IT organization in this way with this governance around it. And that was done by my predecessor. And I've always said, that taking the patent office digital, to me, was as much or more, the work of my predecessor than it was the work, my work. And that what I inherited was a model that could be driven to a transformation perspective and didn't have to deal with a lot of the blocking and tackling that had already been done, before I got there. So that's another way, right? It's a total other end of the spectrum. Something bad happens, right? It can be a catalyst.
Well, and I've been there as a CIO myself when something bad happens. Our email exchange server crashed after. It was kind of funny, right? Because I just asked for $500,000 to upgrade it. And of course they said, no, we don't have the budget for it. 3 weeks later, it completely crashes. There was plenty of money to tell you to move that wherever I needed to, whenever I needed to. So I know how that, that can happen. Yeah. Disaster can really make change.
Funny how that works, but it certainly made you look good because you had the foresight to put it on the table before anything bad happened. So you're, hey, this guy knows what he's talking about. It's just unfortunate we didn't listen to him.
Yeah. Thanks for listening to Embracing Digital Transformation today. If you liked our episode, go ahead and give us 5 stars on your favorite podcast or video streaming site. You can also find out more on embracingdigital.com. Until next time, keep moving forward and do something wonderful.